Aloha, everybody. We're here today, Puna Lunch Club with Ashley Kierkiewicz, Councilwoman District 4. Ashley, thank you for being on our podcast today.
Thanks for the invitation.
Yeah.
First political.
I know, now we're really politicking.
Safe space.
Yeah. Well, we're going to talk about some things today, from hubs that you've set up to legislation, housing, all of that kind of stuff.
All the fun stuff.
Yeah, of course. Let's start with a little bit about you and where you're from.
Sure. Born and raised in Hilo. Grew up on Kinaole Street. St. Joseph Lifer, class of 2004. Go Cardinals! Do you know that our prosecuting attorney is also my classmate? Keldon Mulgen. He's a Cardinal.
You know, I've never been in front of the prosecuting attorney, so.
You should have him on your podcast.
Yeah.
He's from Puna. And then I also found out Talmadge Magno is a Cardinal as well. So all kinds of St. Joseph peeps in the county right now.
Nice, so you're well connected.
A little bit. I graduated from UH Hilo with my bachelor's in political science. I did an internship with Senator Akaka in Washington, D.C. That was when President Obama was elected. So it was super electric atmosphere, a lot of more young people getting involved in politics, and thought I wanted to work at the federal level. And then realized how slow things happen there. There was somebody in Senator Akaka's office that was helping to put together the Affordable Care Act. And I was like, how long have you been working on this? He's like, a decade. I'm like, a decade? I cannot wait, right? I cannot wait to see my work product. And then it changed so dramatically when it was introduced. I'm like, you know what? If I'm ever going to get involved in government, it has to be at the local level where I can work with the people, but also see things happen and materialize more quickly. After graduation, I worked for nearly a decade in communication and public outreach, so PR. And then there was a moment where I felt in 2017 that, you know what, looking at the council, I just want there to be more local, millennial, working mom perspective at the table because it was missing. And so I did what is often considered the unthinkable in Hawaii politics, and that is I challenged an incumbent.
Nice.
And we won and have been serving for 3 terms now, going on a little over 5 years. And I've got 1 more term to run and serve if I choose to.
And then that's it?
And that's it. And then you're maxed out at 8 years. And I think after 8 years, anybody that's been in office needs a little bit of therapy because it's a lot. It's a lot on yourself. It's a lot on your family, a lot of sacrifices. But also I think people need to share the load in terms of taking on that kuleana of serving community and local government.
Yeah, so you kind of laid the foundation and now it's time to pass it on.
Yeah, so I want to start thinking about who will be the successor, who is going to take over and champion Puna's needs and be the voice, in local government.
Nice. We have a lot of bricklayers on this podcast.
Okay.
You guys just keep paving the way. Yeah. So what's next after your political career ends?
I don't know. People ask me all the time, are you going to, try to move up into the state capital? Will you try to run for mayor? What is it looking like going to DC? And I don't say yes or no to any of that. I think it's too soon to tell. My kids are young, right? My partner is a firefighter. He's been in the department for about 10 years now. Actually works at the Keao station. We've got our 2 littles that we're raising here in Hawaiian Paradise Park. My daughter Aria is going to be 12 in May. And my son Toby just turned 7, and you don't get to experience them growing up twice, right? So I want to be able to be there for them. So after council, we'll see what happens, but it's not like I'm not busy. I'm also at Naleo TV, running our island's public educational and governmental TV station. Nice.
So what are some things that you would like to see or changes you would like to implement in the last term?
In the last term?
Yeah, so when you kind of walk away, what are you looking at have really made the biggest impact?
So a lot of the work that we've been doing over the last 5 years has been laying the groundwork for building capacity in community. Politicians come and go, administrations come and go, but community is always there. And so if we can teach people how to leverage the process to bring about change, I think that would be a huge win. If we can mobilize coalitions of people across communities to work together, that's a huge win. And that's some of the work that we've already started to build, which is amazing. We've created spaces where a county and community can hash things out, but still walk away as friends because we live in the same community. We all want what's best for community. And sometimes we have to make those hard decisions together. So I think one of the biggest legacies to leave is this like continued dialogue, right? This open like line of communication between county and community. I think beyond that, if I am elected for a fourth and final term, elections are this year, I want to work on code updates, words on paper, because these are the things that are going to have long-lasting impact and really, impact the way we are able to ensure that like local people get chance and can make it here.
Mm-hmm. What kind of code updates?
What kind of code updates? I see Max getting a little bit like concerns. So like one of the things that we're actively working on, there's something called the housing agency. Mm-hmm. It was established back when the county, had started. And originally the intention of the housing agency was to approve plans related to like Section 8 vouchers. There's so many needs related to housing today. Mm-hmm. And so right now the housing agency makeup is council members, but council members without their legislative hat. So I show up as a regular person, not in my council member capacity. And that gets a little bit confusing. And I'm not a housing expert. I am not a housing developer. And so I don't always think that council members are the best folks to be serving in that role. So one of the things that we've been doing for like the last year and a half, because our housing office loves to do studies, they love to study a problem and make sure that any decision that they make is grounded in like science and data. Anyway, I told them that, can we please shift the housing agency to be made up of individuals that are actually involved in housing development? Because if they are having a problem building, they can let you know, and then you can start working with other agencies and departments within the county to make changes. So that's one thing.
What about zoning, like multifamily zoning or being able to rezone properties or ADUs? Because I think the problem here is that if you can build multiple dwellings on one property or you can house multiple families, then it keeps it a lot more affordable because you only need to purchase a single parcel and you can put multiple homes on it. So affordable housing and then also finding the space for the housing. There's a lot of land, but if we can do multifamily, which there's not a lot of opportunities for in Hilo just because of the zoning, and then the rezoning process is pretty arduous.
Yes. What's your understanding of that process?
Rezoning?
Yeah.
My understanding of the rezoning is I haven't even attempted to rezone it just because of...
Doesn't it seem scary?
I don't know if it seems scary, but I think that time is money, so you have to purchase the property first.
And move quickly.
Right, yeah. Because now you have money that's sitting there. And if you don't get the rezoning approved, you're
stuck.
I don't want to say a loss, but you know what I mean? You can put all the time and effort into it. You cannot get it approved and then have to sell.
Yeah.
And so that money tied up in that project could have been utilized in other ways, which is, I think, for the permitting process as well, right? It has gotten a lot better since Epic, but I mean, if you want to build X amount of houses, you kind of need all the capital to purchase those properties in the beginning. So you're sitting on a lot of capital and you have to be able to float that, whereas if you could, say you could put 2 or 3 homes on one lot, that would cut your costs down by 2 to 3 times because you'd only have to purchase one parcel.
Okay, so 3 things that we got to talk about. ADUs, the rezoning process, and just zoning in general. So we'll start with ADUs. There is a bill that Councilmember Kimball and I put forward to essentially remove the terminology of ohana from the code. Because right now, when you build an ohana, only a family member can stay there. What we've done is we've updated the code so that we allow for ADUs, accessory dwelling units. And right now, what we've proposed is build them anywhere, as many as possible on a parcel. That bill has now gone to the Planning Commission. Anytime there's changes to Chapter 25, that's the zoning code, it gets brought before council. Then it has to be referred to the planning director and planning commissions for their review and mana'o and recommendations. After they make a recommendation, it gets sent back to the council in committee for us to further deliberate, then sent to the former county council for a first and second reading of the bill before it actually becomes a law. So I hear you on the ADU piece. And so what we've done is we're actually trying to make that happen right now. And so when it comes up for planning commission, it would be great if there are members of community like yourself that, show up and testify in support of that measure. And the whole idea is like build ADUs with a recognition of like the carrying capacity of the parcel and the infrastructure that's there.
So what does that look like the infrastructure requirements? Like, so say you have like an acre of ag land, right? So how do you decide, I mean, in the political world, how many units you can put on it?
So like think about it this way, right? Let's say we have an acre here in HPP. Department of Health says you need to have septic for 5 bedrooms. So when you think about how many ADUs you could put on a property, you're limited to those kinds of like infrastructure requirements. So DOH says only 5 bedrooms because that's what we will allow for 1 septic tank. We don't have any municipal water infrastructure here in Puna. So it's basically catchment tanks that can accommodate your ADUs. So I think it's hard to say, by zoning or parcel size, how much you can put, how many ADUs or dwelling units you can put on our particular property.
It's more about the infrastructure.
It's all about the infrastructure. It's the water, it's the wastewater piece, it's the transportation networks, right? Like you think about if you're growing more and increasing density, that's going to put a strain on your transportation infrastructure.
That's great. So now let's talk about infrastructure. So now we have all this development happening in Puna.
Yep.
And what does the infrastructure look like for that? So I feel like in Hawaii, a lot of times we know the development is coming. We know that the increase in population will be there, but we don't seem to forefront the infrastructure to accommodate that. We wait till it's already here, and then we already are having the issue, and then we start discussing and implementing things to kind of accommodate the need.
It's very reactive instead of proactive. And I think over time, I want to say maybe after like Steve Yamashiro's time in office, after the 90s, we went from government putting in the infrastructure to now making developers do it. And who do developers pass all the costs on to?
The buyers.
The buyer.
Right.
So it makes it increasingly more expensive to develop. So it would be great if we can find ways to not just like leverage bonds to put in infrastructure, but think about, are there public-private partnerships? Are there grants, federal grants that are out there that we can leverage to put in the infrastructure, knowing that our population is growing and it's only bound to grow.
Right. So on the right side of Ainaloa, in between Ainaloa and Orchid Land, there were large parcels, 300 acre plus, I think, a few 100 acre and maybe a 300 acre. And so when I went to the planning department and asked about subdividing, they said that you have to provide all the roads, you have to put a wastewater treatment plant, no catchment tanks. And so, I mean, there's the opportunity right there for hundreds of more homes, but like you said, right, as the developers, who has the kind of money to do that? You're talking millions just in a wastewater treatment plant, millions in surveys and the subdividing process, and then it's definitely not affordable after that.
Nope.
So
there has to be some government intervention in that process. And so one of the things that, I was able to do in 2022 was introduce a bill to create the Affordable Housing Production Program. And what that does is every year, the mayor must include at least $5 million in that fund. If we are seeing, a time of abundance, like a lot more real property taxes coming in, they are able to put in more money into that housing production fund. I'm happy to say that over the last couple years, we've had that time of abundance. So there has been $18 million available for housing production. The Office of Housing and Community Development managed that program. They did a first round of awards, and nearly 18 million was recently awarded, supporting developers around the island to get to the next step of their development phase. So what we're going to see in the next 3 years, if everything tracks correctly, is potentially up to 1,200 more affordable housing units online around the island.
And so how do you access the fund?
You got to apply. I will send you the information because we need people like you from this place that are going after those funds. And the whole idea was a lot of these monies that are available like at the state and even federal level, it's very competitive. And so if we can provide this gap funding, right, to help you to get to the next level, so that you can access more capital, then that's what we want to do.
Nice. That's great. I didn't even know that that was available.
So like I want to highlight one project that's happening within the Puna community. There is a land trust that we have here that was established. Are you familiar with that, like housing trust model?
No.
So it's basically like affordable housing in perpetuity. And so local families are able to rent it at an affordable rate, build equity, and take that to buy a market value home. They run a very successful model on Maui, and some members of our community have started a land trust here on Hawai'i Island. They were one of the recipients this last round, so they're doing the exact same thing that I just described for a couple of lots here in Puna.
Okay, so explain the process a little bit. I mean, as the family, so you come in, you rent the house from the land trust.
Correct.
At a decreased rent.
At an affordable rate.
And so you then save money to purchase an on-market home?
Yes.
I see.
Yep, you're building the equity. You're building equity.
In the rental?
In the rental.
You own it?
No, you don't own it.
Okay.
But some of that money is being set aside so that you have enough to now put a down payment down on a market value home.
The money you're paying rent?
Yes, a portion of it.
So you're paying the rent to the trust?
To the trust.
The trust is saving it for
They're
you?
saving it for you.
So
a
that you
portion
can
of it.
now put a down payment on a home?
Yes.
That's
because now you then have a unit that's freed up for another local family.
Right.
Yep. They run this program pretty successfully on Maui.
Yeah.
They bought a bunch of homes that went into foreclosure after the 2008 recession. And so it took a while, but we finally have an organization that's doing something similar here. There's that model, but then there's also the whole, I think it's called Housing Conservancy. They run it successfully in Texas and Washington, D.C. But basically you have a nonprofit that is managing money from local philanthropists who don't necessarily want to see an immediate return on investment in their dollars, but they're all about how do we give back to community. So it's essentially housing for our local workforce that is funded by philanthropists. You could think about folks in the employee retirement system, right? Unions, they have a lot of money. They could pay into this and then be building housing that's available for locals. That's the Housing Conservancy Trust model. So when you think about what are the legacy projects that we want to get done in the next 3 years, it's stuff like that. That's going to have long-term impact.
Yeah, that's the first program I heard about where they actually save part of your monthly payment for you as a down payment on a home.
Because I think one of the biggest barriers for local people being able to get a home is the down payment.
Right.
Yeah.
And so I know that I think Hope Services in Section 8, I could be wrong about the Section 8, but I think Hope Services and Section 8 are providing programs for people in the rental program to purchase homes as well, right?
I'm not familiar with Hope Services programs outside of helping people transition out of or homelessness or prevent homelessness. I don't know about the purchasing of homes programs that they run. I know that is something that Hawaiian Community Assets and Hawaiian Community Lending do.
Yeah, so I have a lady who was looking to purchase a home and she was renting from Section 8, and there's a class she has to take, and it's kind of like an approval process through Section 8 to help her get a home. But it's the first time I've encountered that as well. So.
I think that maybe Hope is one of those providers because I know that is a program where you're kind of building the literacy around home ownership. That's something that is offered through Office of Housing and Community Development.
Nice. And so You're taking part in the transient accommodations as well?
I am, yeah. I found out that Heather Kimball wanted to, revisit this. In 2018, the council at the time had adopted an ordinance to provide regulations for unhosted rentals. So basically, people that are buying properties up, nobody's living on the property and renting them out unhosted.
Right.
So those regulations exist. What's on the table right now is regulating hosted, so owner hosted, as well as operator hosted. So owner hosted is basically, this is your home, say this is your primary home in one ag district. You could do a transient accommodation rental at any time. There's no deadline for you to apply. If it's something that you want to do, can. What we're closing the tap on are things like operator hosted. So people that are buying homes and then paying someone to live there and essentially manage the property. One of the things that I was concerned about was the requirements for building permits. So that is something that is not being required as part of this regulation. It is a self-certification. So you're certifying that the accommodation that you are providing to visitors is safe and meets public health and safety standards.
As the host then.
As the host,
So
yeah.
you don't need a permit.
You don't need to provide a building permit to the county
Right.
in the same way that has been required in the previous legislation.
So if you have an owner-operated one,
Owner operated, so it's your primary home, you can do it anytime.
okay. Now if you have an operator-operated,
Operator operated, yep.
so what does that look like? Say you have one already.
Okay.
And so with the new legislation coming in, you get kind of
You
grandfathers
register.
you in,
Yes.
or
So
how does
there
it
are
work?
there are certain zones where it's allowed,
Right.
right? Like village commercial, downtown Hilo, resort.
Right.
Those are the places that we've said this is where we want our tourists to stay. It's most appropriate because there are the amenities that will, create for a good visitor experience there. Anybody that is currently operating the operator model that you just described outside of those zoning districts, they are grandfathered in and they would apply for a non-conforming use certificate.
Oh.
So it's it's a registration program similar to how when you go to the DMV and you register your vehicle,
Right.
the DMV doesn't look at your vehicle and say, okay, you don't have your headlight working. I'm not going to issue this to you, right? Like the DMV is not providing you the safety check. They're just registering your vehicle as a vehicle that can be driven here in Hawaii County. So same thing here. You're just registering that you are doing transient accommodations.
I see. And then you apply for a special use permit.
If it is outside of the districts that it is allowed. So if it's outside of resort area, like ag,
Right.
you would need a non-conforming use.
So I've heard some people say maybe Mauna Loa Estates, you might be able to do like standalone STRVOs, unhosted and unowner operated or operator operated.
Sorry, say that one more time.
So like in Mauna Loa Estates, I've heard some people say that because it's zoned residential,
Yes.
that you may be able to get a standalone permit. So a permit where you don't live there and you don't have a host there. It's just
In residential zone.
yeah.
If it's not currently operating as such, then
Right.
it's not allowed.
I see.
When the council adopted regulations for unhosted rentals in 2018, they said no more.
Yeah.
No more outside of these particular zoning districts, like village commercial,
Right,
like
right.
downtown areas, like resort.
Okay. Cool. And what about the creation or rezoning of more commercial properties?
And where are you referring to?
Like in Hilo, in Puna, there's not a lot of commercial opportunity. So like if you wanna start a business that requires a commercial zoning, we don't have a lot of areas here or a lot of opportunities to purchase commercial property. So is there anything coming up or anywhere that may be available in the near future?
Are you looking to buy? Is that what you're asking?
Always.
So I'm not sure if you're aware, but like on where is it? 26 off of Kaloli. There is a 20-acre parcel that was gifted to the county to develop a park. So we've gone through an environmental assessment, and we are hopefully going to be breaking ground on a county park in the next few years. Right across the street from that is property owned by the Watermills to do commercial village development, so like a regional town center.
Yeah. Is that parcels they're going to sell to individuals, or those are just development projects of their own?
So they've sat on that land for quite a long time.
And they own many parcels
They
like
own many, many parcels. And so I think it's worth having a conversation. What do you guys plan to do?
Yeah.
And especially now, it's an intriguing time because water supply is going to be putting in water infrastructure in HPP at the park. And so right across the street, there's a potential now to develop because you have access to water.
And how did they get that zone commercial?
What do you mean?
The Watermills, that portion across the park, how is that zone commercial? Because it's the only
It
land.
happens before like we were born.
I see.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, that was also interesting, like I said, right? Because I've looked at that many times in HPP, and they own the same exact amount of land right across from the county park. But that's what I mean about the opportunities, right? You have one person who owns every commercial parcel in HPP. So for people who are looking for single parcels or like, hey, I want to start a business, my business is commercial zone.
Like one thing that could be considered is something called land pooling, where you have a bunch of like lot owners get together and say, you know what, why don't we hooey up?
Right.
Us five, our 5 lots, and let's go in with a shared application to rezone all of this. That way you're preventing like spot zoning, like a patchwork of different zoning,
Right.
but you're working in a more cohesive block. Like that is a strategy worth looking into. And I think that like strengthens the application and the request because now you've built a collective of people that want to do it in a particular location.
So you get like 5 in a row, you all go in there, say we want to make this whole area commercial.
Yeah, rezone them.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so the process would be you apply with the planning director. They review your application, and they have a recommendation. They then bring that to the planning commission. And because it's an east side project, it would be reviewed by the Windward Planning Commission. They review it, they make the recommendations, then they send that over to the county council, where it goes to the Planning, Land Use, and Development Committee for their deliberation. And so every step of the way, you show up and you make your case.
Nice. Just a quick side note. For any of you guys watching, like information is the most powerful thing you can have. And so here we have Ashley and she knows the process. She's telling us basically what's going on, how you can do it. And so from here on out, everybody's always talking about what they're going to do or want to do, but you have to implement it. So we're bringing you the information. What you do with it after that is up to you. But being informed is really the most powerful thing you can do, is have the education, have the knowledge, know the steps, and implement that. So I appreciate that, you sharing with us the process and all the things that are taking place, because I know even myself, when I read some of the legislation and all of that, I'm still unsure what's going on, just reading it all. But having more clarification also helps make more educated decisions in the future.
Yeah. Information should be seen and embraced as a tool of empowerment.
Yeah.
And so if I live down the street from you, up the street from you, so if you ever want to just like talk story about what's being proposed at the county level, I'm happy to do that.
Yeah.
I cannot speak for what's happening on the statewide level though.
You see that now you guys behind because she lives right down the road, so I get the most pertinent information. Yeah.
Anytime. Just got to make me lunch. I'm kind of waiting for my lunch.
Yeah. Well, it's breakfast.
Okay, we'll have brunch then. We'll have brunch. But no, like I think it's really important to have conversations about legislation because it impacts our future.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So what's going on in Puna? Tell us a little bit about the hubs and the revitalized Puna, the project you've done, and
But like, can we just start with like some wins for Puna this week? We had council this week. We meet every 2 weeks. And so one of the goals that I have is always to have something on the agenda that is going to support our Puna community. We had a few wins. On Tuesday, it was like a 1.5 year long project. I was able to put together a resolution to fund a groundwater study through USGS to understand what impact to public health, nearshore environments, our groundwater systems, geothermal operations might be having in Lower Puna. So we worked with community to develop that proposal. USGS is going to be completing that study. And the really cool thing is that members of our community are going to be able to go out into the field with them, do the water sampling, and understand how that process occurs, down to like, how do I use this instrumentation? That way we can build the capacity of locals to be able to do that in perpetuity and like monitor, our water resources. So like, I think that's pretty huge and, worth celebration. Like this has been something that the community has asked for since I think like Mayor Kinoy was in office, and we're finally getting that groundwater study done. So that's one thing. The other thing is, and I'm sure you've been following this, is the Puna Alternate Routes study. So when Bill 107 was before the council, there was money that was being provided by the state, $1 million to do a study, the PMAR study, Puna Makai Alternate Route. And the requirement was that the county had to like match half of that, so 500,000. And I think you saw like what kind of happened within the community, like on social media, what was happening at the council. it was like super intense. It was really intense because here we have the state saying, okay, county, here's a new kuleana for you. Do this study.
Right.
And my understanding is that promises were made to Hawaiian homestead communities of, we're not even going to consider you guys in the study. Well, that was never put on paper. And when we all know, like, if you don't write it down and it's not adopted as law, oftentimes people have like memory loss, right? They forget, or they said, oh, I never said that. And so when everything came to council, there was a lot of like concern because that wasn't explicitly stated. It never said anywhere, exclude Panaewa and Keaukaha from consideration.
Where would it come out if it didn't?
So one of the things that, you know, I want Public Works to do is to think about, where are people going? Are they all going to Hilo? Are they going to Kona? Is there a way to connect the KL bypass straight up into the Poinako extension onto Saddle Road? I don't know. Like, it's hard to say where we should put the roads until we find out where people are going.
Yeah.
But like, I think what was so painful about the whole process was, like, you mentioned earlier, the lack of like communication between all the parties.
Yeah.
Here, the state was giving us one kuleana, like not really being upfront about everything. And then the council is very publicly having to resolve for a situation we did not create.
Right.
And so Councilmember Liloy and I, hearing community, right, we introduced a resolution that basically said, do not even consider Hawaiian Home Lands. We've already had Kali Watson in the community say, do not include us in an alternate route, like, you know, study. And so we elevated it through a resolution, and I got some flack from the Puna community because they said, no, you got to keep all the options on the table. And I was like, but wait a minute, like, you're going to ask the Hawaiian community to sacrifice more?
Right.
When did you ask them? When did you guys sit down and have the conversation to make sure it'd be okay? And it never occurred.
Right.
And so, like, that was a very, I think, a moment where I had to remind myself that being in office requires you to not just, you cannot do what is convenient. You got to think about long-term implications and do what's right. And so I stand by the work that Sue and I did with that resolution, because it showed the community that we hear you and we're going to find other ways. And I think we embraced it as a moment to bring communities together. And so following, you know, like the failure of the original bill, worked really hard to make sure that we could salvage that $1 million from the state, got the county to give a little bit more. So now we have $2 million, and the study is being expanded to include routes for all of Puna. Not just Puna Makai, and Puna Makai is considered below Highway 130, but the entire Puna region. Like, if we're gonna plan, let's plan right. And let's think about better connectivity between upper and lower and all the communities that reside in it.
Yeah, that's a great plan, you know, some forward thinking, because I think with everybody pushing the development in Puna and the affordable housing, I mean, that's where a majority of the growth is going to be.
This is like where, like, one of the last places of affordability are in the entire state.
That's what, what I mean. So you even have people who can't, I mean,
make it on Oahu, moving here.
Exactly, moving to Puna, everywhere. So I think with that being said, we're definitely going to need the foresight and the infrastructure to support that growth. And, like, whether it's in the Puna community, infrastructure in the community of Puna itself, and roads or routes, I mean, we're going to have to accommodate Hilo as well, because all of that overflow is coming into Hilo, like you said, right?
Yeah, we're the bedroom community. I think a lot of our folks are the workers that are in schools and hospitals and, like, retails and office and doctors' offices.
And so tell us about the Revitalize Puna.
So this weekend, we have our 10th activation at the Billy Kenoi District Park Gym. And we do these, like, every quarter. Right. So we bring county, state, federal resources, different nonprofits to the gym, have a resource area, but also we bring in, like, leadership from these different departments to talk story directly with community about issues and projects that are happening in community or things that they want to see. And it's been really well received. I think it's going to be our biggest event ever on Saturday, if you have time. 10 a.m. to 2 p.m. Like over 450 people have registered, which is like more than double than what we've received in the past. I'm going to be hosting a food summit as part of the activation. We have a lot of like mulch and plant giveaways and other resources for people that are working in food systems, agriculture. So if you're interested, drop by. I'm going to also be hosting a panel to talk story with people like Loa'e Kekahuna with Maku'u Market, Uncle Iopa Manakea of Men of Pa'a, and others that are working in food systems to just understand what do you need to be more successful and how can we duplicate your efforts.
Mm-hmm. Where can people find out about this stuff?
We have an Instagram and a Facebook at Revitalize Puna, but if you want to register for the event, revitalizepuna10.eventbrite.com.
Nice.
But just Google it.
Nice. And so you talked about workforce development as well as part of this program, right?
As part of the Resilience Hubs program, which is a little bit separate from Revitalize Puna. But, you know, I would say like there's an aspect of workforce development within Revitalize Puna. Like very recently, our hui. So our hui in Revitalize Puna is made up of like county officials and community people. And that collaboration was very intentional, building relationship, building trust so that we can make hard decisions together, but also like have skin in the game. One of the things that we did was we secured an economic recovery fellow through, I think, the Institute or International Institute for like Sustainable Economic Development. So we are one of 65 counties, municipalities across the state that has a fellow. And I'm really stoked that our fellow is actually someone that is born and raised Puna. His name is Mina Viritua Jr. And he used to be with the PIPES program at the University of Hawaii at Hilo. But some of the things that we're working at are how do we give youth more opportunities? How do we support our farmers? How do we have things like the Hilo Night Market happening in Puna and all the different, you know, neighborhoods and communities that want it in our region? And how do we begin to create like a resource hub for people that are interested in becoming entrepreneurs, small businesses, might need help with marketing? So we have a fellow that is going to be helping us design what those resources look like for the next 30 months. I'm passionate about making sure that our kids have opportunities to stay here. So like when you host your, like, what is that, the construction zone day for kids?
Yeah.
And you give them a chance to be like, check out all this really cool like operating equipment. You can be driving this and check out how much money you make. Like I think exposing our kids at an early age to everything that's available to them outside of college, like getting into the trades, I think is really, really important. So I don't know if the county has a capacity to be hosting things like that, which is why I think it's great people like you in the private sector, you know, take on that kuleana to do it. But it would be great to like partner so that we can continue to support your efforts, or you could do more of that.
We're having another one this summer in June, so I'm always open to partnerships.
So I can put my other hat on, my Naleo hat.
You can.
And I'm going to just say, how cool would it be if we could do a little segment that features this and get it on our channels and our website and our platforms?
Yeah, that would be great.
Yeah. Great to spotlight all the great work community members are doing. Because I think a lot is happening, but I just don't think that we know that way. And so like we're not able to like make connections and stuff.
Yeah, I mean, even some of the stuff you were talking about, I didn't know about. You know, I didn't know about every month at the gym for I forget.
Every 3 months.
Every 3 months.
It's okay. But it does feel like every month we're doing something there.
Every month. I had no idea that all that stuff was going on in Puna because I just don't, it's just not right there. So the Revitalize Puna and stuff, but I think now 16,000 people see that, so they'll know where it is and how to get the resources. What do you think about like the Pohiki roads and the boat ramp? I know that's another.
Yeah. Well, and I mean, I was just on the phone the other day with another Lavaia about the situation in Hilo, Hilo Harbor. Very difficult for like boats to get in and out. And so like between not having anything in Pohoiki and now potentially Hilo, it's a really dire situation. You know, with Pohoiki, we can expect there to be the dredging to occur this summer.
Right.
That's what I'm told. I am a little bit disappointed that we didn't get all the funding needed to completely dredge all of that sand material out and create like, you know, reinforcement so that sand doesn't fall back in. But the engineers feel pretty confident about what they're able to do with $6 million. But we need that because that ocean is like icebox for many people that, you know, rely on the ocean for subsistence and also like to just support their household.
So when do you think it'll be like usable?
I'm hoping soon thereafter. Like usually Dobor is at our Revitalized Puna activation events, but the guy that usually shows up, Finn McCall, it's his son's birthday or something. So hopefully we can get one of the consultants there from the Lim Tiako Consulting Group.
And they're the ones doing the dredging?
They're the ones that are doing the
dredging.
engineering.
I see.
Yeah, that have like basically come up with the plans to
Right.
like dredge it so that it opens and it stays open. I'm like, this
fill
is like a
back in.
very expensive experiment.
Yeah.
Like, I hope it works because we need to get back.
Mm-hmm.
And then on top of that, there's all the restoration of the inundated roads.
Yeah. What is that looking like?
I mean, in all honesty, one thing that I told Public Works was be trigger ready. Like when we get the notice to proceed from the federal government, which allows us to start, you know, putting out RFPs for design and construction work, be ready. Make sure you've got all your rights of entry, all of that secure. That way there are no more like hangups in the process. Hoping they did their job, right? You just gotta hope. Like everybody's like, stay in your lane. I'm like, it's really hard to because you just
Yeah.
wanna make sure that this stuff actually happens because like, community's been waiting. It's been frustrating. And I don't want to be made to look like a liar. Like if you said you're going to restore it by the end of 2025, you better make sure.
Yeah.
And if not, you need to explain why. Because you were so confident when you put out those initial, you know, timelines.
What's it like being in that position? In the position of like one thing's been told to the community and then making sure that what is said actually happens. Like how do you deal with that?
It's hard. And sometimes I just want to throw F-bombs all the day and punch walls. Like it's really, really frustrating. But I can't do that, right?
Yeah.
Like I have to keep it together for community and continue to champion. And in this role, I have learned very well when to blow shit up, right? No, seriously.
Yeah.
And when I got to dismantle.
Right.
Right? Like, because at the end of the day, you still have to put all the pieces back together of community. And so know when to hold them, know when to fold them. Yeah. And you can still get your point across and be very assertive without like getting personal.
What do you do when like you've implemented that and you don't see the result?
I can be a pain in the ass. So
You
you
just-
get incessant calls, and I have your personal cell phone number, and I will not let you sleep, right? Persistence is key.
Kill them with kindness.
Yeah.
Constantly.
You're doing such a great job. How are you? You're doing such a great job. Like,
Me?
what's
Oh.
the status of the project?
Yeah,
Oh, what can I
yeah,
do to help? Is there a phone call I need to make? A letter I need to write? Someone's door I got to knock on?
Right.
Or kick down? Like, tell me what to do.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so this sounds like a full-time job, more than full-time. Like
You
a
know, like
full-time
the
job?
charter says council members just need to go to meetings, and meetings are twice a month. And so whatever you do outside of those meetings is completely on you.
Right.
I like to keep busy. I get a lot of like personal satisfaction out of like using my skills and talents to like create good in community and empower others to realize their potential. So I like to make busy. I find problems to solve, essentially.
Yeah. Nice.
Yeah. I don't know. I mean, you get one shot at this, right? Like voters put you in office for 2 years, and so you got to work your ass off to make sure that they are feeling like you've made a difference to improve their quality of life. And
Yeah.
you've represented them on the dais, at the Capitol, wherever there's a need, you show up for them.
That's really great. Admirable.
Oh, you should do it one day.
No, I'm
Nah, I need
okay.
you building homes.
I'm okay. But so what does the process look like? Like, because everybody's like, oh, it takes so long, right? I think that's people's main concern is all about time.
Yeah,
right?
time
Like-
is money.
Like, how long does it take to do this? Why is it taking so long? How come it hasn't been done? So let's just take any one of these projects. I mean, whether it's an alternate route, whether it's redoing the roads in Puna or the Poiki boat ramp. Like, what does the process look like? So okay, so we have a disaster or there's a need. What happens?
You need a champion. And you need to have political will
Right.
and courage to get it done because I don't know if everybody's going to be on board with what you're trying to do.
Right.
Yeah.
how do you differentiate that? Like, so of course nobody's always going to agree. So like within the community, here's the resolution. We agree, we disagree. At that point, how do you make those decisions?
I'll take Puna Alternate Routes as as an example. The first bill that came before us for Puna Makai Alternate Routes, it wasn't the right vessel, right? It only looked at Makai. It didn't think about Puna as a region. It also didn't have anything that would address the concerns, rightfully so, of homestead community. And so you have to make a decision to like solve for it as much as possible. Sue and I tried to do that through the resolution, but for some people that wasn't enough. And so not getting like beat down by the process, right? Because like after that vote of losing $1.5 million, like I don't just have that sitting around. Like maybe you do, I don't know.
I definitely don't.
Okay, so like that's a lot of money.
Yes.
A lot of money to come up with a professional plan and designs for roads.
Right.
As soon as that meeting was over, of course, I'm calling people. Ed Sniffen, can we do this? Transportation chair, can we do this? Checking with my lawyers, can I do a reiteration of this bill that expands the scope to be all of Puna? And can we like find a way to incorporate the language from the resolution so that it excludes homestead lands? So like, even though things don't always work out the way you want them to the first time around, I think it's having like the tenacity to keep going and to find a way forward.
So just don't ever give up.
Don't ever give up.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No quitters.
No.
No.
Quitting. No
No
quitting.
quitting.
Quitting's not an option, right? There's too much at stake.
Yeah. Too much work has already been done.
Or nothing's been done,
I see.
right? Like if nothing's been done, why do we need to keep waiting to like have community rise up and say we need this? Like they've said it for decades. Just do them already. Do it.
Right.
Do it, because it only gets more expensive the longer we wait. Remember, time is money. But let's dive into that and this idea of like, do we have to get it right and perfect every single time? Does it have to be right like the first time? Like, are we not normalizing risk taking as a community, and we're saying that you shouldn't fail?
I think there's definitely certain aspects where you do have to get it right. But failure is where most lessons are learned. If you only win, I mean, you know how to win, but when you lose, you have to figure out how to win again. Mm-hmm. So I think from the failures is where I've learned most of my lessons, right? Like, somebody asked me the other day, they say like, well, what do you do like when you fail? And for me, I don't take failure personal. I don't take it as like, I'm a failure or internalize it that way. I just look at it from...
It didn't work.
Right. Or like a business perspective. And I just say like, okay, did it all not work or did a part of it not work? Like first I analyze why it didn't work. And then I analyze what part didn't work. Like, did 80% of it was good and the last 20 wasn't? And then I readjust. And as I go through the process, because most things I do are repetitive, so I don't usually do them once and then that's it. So as I go through the process, I would say I fail a lot of little times before I get to having it where I want it. So I'll go through the process and then I'll see the parts that either hindered the process or made it not work seamlessly. And then I'll adjust and then we'll go again. And I'll keep doing that until I've built up a system and process
that works.
Exactly.
Yeah. But you're always iterating. You're always looking for more efficiencies.
I think even when in other people's mind it's a success, you're constantly doing that. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? So you're always looking for innovation, or even if it works well, people are like, oh, don't reinvent the wheel, but somehow it's like you can't help it. Yeah. Like you have to constantly look on how you can improve, how you can make the model better, or what process you can implement, how you can cut your cost, how you can put out a better product for a cheaper price, all of those kind of things. So I think...
And I think the main thing is like try. Like you don't know if you don't know if you don't try.
Yeah.
And so sometimes it's not going to work out like you say 100% of the time. But I think like embracing failure as like a wipeout, right? Like when you go surfing, you get knocked off of a wave. That's a wipeout. Do you go back in and cry?
Yeah.
No. Well, it depends on how big the waves are. I don't know. But you paddle back out, right?
Yeah.
You paddle back out and you try again. And I think normalizing that sort of behavior, especially in youth today, who I feel like are always striving to just like be absolutely perfect and do it all, be like, no, just try and figure it out, because as you say, that's how you learn and that's how you grow.
I think the sooner you start failing,
The better.
yep.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? The sooner you take the risk, you take the chance, you deal with the failure, you learn how to build off that and really analyze it. I think as you get older, you develop a little more mentally. And I think part of that mental development has to do with how you analyze a failure. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's not,
You have the maturity of like time and experience. That's why.
yeah. So I think it's all like in hindsight and how you analyze the situation. But, you know, you use the surfing example. And I think that if you're passionate about what you're failing at, you'll fix it, right? Like if you've never surfed before, you go out, you get pounded and they almost drown and you're like, oh man, I'm never doing this again. And you're not that passionate about it.
Yeah.
You might just pack up. So I think it's important.
To have a passion, an obsession, because it'll see you through those really hard days.
Exactly. So I think whatever it is you're doing, if you're really passionate about it, when you fail at it, you'll fix it or you'll find a way, you'll analyze it. So there are things I do that I'm not passionate about. So what I've learned is that I don't try to be good at everything. I surround myself with people who are good at what I'm not good at. And so we're all functioning at 100% because I'm doing what I'm best at, you're doing what you're best at, and the whole unit, everybody is doing what they're good at. So instead of me trying to work on things that I'm not good at and allocate time to that, I just put that time towards what I am good at. So I think you also have to learn how to build a team and work with other people and network in that aspect and be able to create a unit and fill needs with people who are good at what you're not good at.
Yeah, and represent their strengths, but also recognize when you can push people a little bit.
Which is every day.
Yeah, because like sometimes I think people might just like mentally limit themselves in what their capabilities are.
Yeah.
And I think they just need somebody to let them know, no, you can. I believe in you.
Yeah.
Push.
Yeah.
So I think that's, that's the other thing is a lot of times you have to be your own cheerleader as well, right? So not only with failures, but maybe you present an idea and nobody believes in your idea or what you're trying to do. And as you're failing, there's those people who are like, see, I told you you couldn't do that. So you also have to find a way to be resilient and tell yourself like, no, I can do it.
Especially as someone in elected office, everybody always has an opinion.
Yeah.
And when they don't take the time to inform themselves about the process and the issue, and they just kind of speak off the cuff, sometimes it can get demoralizing.
Yeah.
So my partner's always like, babe, just don't even read the comments. They don't see you grinding day
Yeah.
in and day out. They don't see you waking up at 4:30 and going to bed at 9, like just working all day. Like,
Yeah.
so just fuck the critics.
There you go.
Keep going.
Yeah.
I can't talk like this at council, so it's very like liberating to just have open mic.
Freedom of speech. That's how it is, I think. But as far as young people, I think opportunities, everybody asks me, where are the opportunities? And opportunities are there when you create them, right? So a lot of people, I feel like kind of just are like, where is it? Is it going to fall in my lap? But you have to put yourself out there and you have to be open to accepting and receiving new opportunities.
And like creating them.
Totally.
Like having this like sense of like frontier design thinking and envisioning what you want and then creating the steps and taking them
Yeah.
to like manifest that. Yeah. I want to send you a report that was recently done by Vibrant Hawaii. It's called Building Bridges, Bridging Gaps or something. But it basically was about work-based learning opportunities for our youth from a youth perspective. They also interviewed teachers because it's interesting to see what educators believe our youth want and then to speak to youth to see what they actually want. And there's a lot of interest in the creative industries in tech and engineering and construction. And these are actually jobs that educators did not think that our youth wanted to go into. So they teach to other things. More than like 50% thought that like kids wanted to get an ag.
like grow food?
Agriculture.
Yeah.
Which I think is very, very important. Like growing, creating value added, exporting that, right? That's like one way we can export aloha.
Yeah.
But it's really interesting to just see the disconnect. But also now that we know what our youth want, what can we do in each of our capacities to create opportunities?
Yeah.
So like with my Naleo hat and knowing that kids want to explore creative media and tech, we've launched a youth media challenge. So it's open to kids 11 through 24 years old. We have 13 different categories that they can create media in. So anything from energy resilience, supporting local, homeless awareness, visiting with respect. We are asking youth to create PSAs, short films, and digital artwork to speak to those themes.
Nice.
And that is a way to just show them, we care about your voice. We care about your perspective. We want to support your creative endeavors. So show us what you got. There'll be prize money. They'll have a chance to have their work featured on like marketing campaigns for that organization. So that's one way we can like incubate some workforce development in that industry. It's an emerging industry, storytelling, content creation.
What are some ways you think like people in the community, like myself and you, can how can we get more people together to create these opportunities and kind of give the youth here those experiences or access to things like that?
So us talking about it right now is one way we're going to get the word out, because you've got parents of kids that are listening and they're going to put on their calendar the next construction zone day. They're going to put on their calendar to check out the Youth Media Challenge so that their youth have a chance to create something.
Have you found it challenging here getting people to work together? What is your experience with that?
So like I'm a Capricorn and I'm super organized and very bossy. So it's like, this is the plan, y'all. And I think you're good at this and I think you're good at that. And if you want their kuleana, you guys got to duke it out. But like, just let's mobilize and move.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
That's kind of how I operate. Like, this is the goal. These are the people and the resources we need to assemble to make it happen. And let's go. And I would say that most often I do not have a fully formed plan. Like, we are building the plane as we fly.
There we go.
But that's
I like
okay.
it.
Like, but you know what I mean? Like, you
Yeah.
cannot wait to have the perfect plan and everything figured out. I think you just have to be like, okay, that's the destination. Let's start rowing.
Yep. That's kind of how we operate as well. We're like, this is where we're going. Okay. And then, yeah, I think that's effective. You know, I think some people try to plan so much that they never take action. I think taking action and implementing is the most important. You can sit here and try to create a plan, perfect a plan, and just keep on planning.
Analysis paralysis, one of my
Yeah.
colleagues used to say.
Yeah.
You can just like over plan and over study and over analyze something to death that nothing happens. So just like take the first step.
Nice. Well, is there anything else you'd like to talk about?
This was fun.
Yeah, it was great.
Thank you.
Yeah, networking.
Like, I mean, like, not all elected officials are scary.
I was never under that impression.
Okay, good.
Yeah.
Good. Like, we're real people.
Yeah.
You can talk to me at KTA or at 4 Mile. Like, it's fine.
I don't even know if I've ever seen you at KTA
What?
or 4 Miles.
Oh, I guess we don't go on the same days and times.
I might just be too busy rowing.
It's all right. You know, I do have to say that it's important to plug in the time for self-care to make
Yeah.
sure you fill your cup. Well, we need some energy resiliency up in here.
Maybe we do. Are we talking about rolling blackouts and help on all?
Can you believe that happens? Oh my God. I was like, we need to get you guys on the TV stations talking about why that happens and what you guys are doing to make sure that this does not become a part of like everyday life for us.
We gotta go solar.
Firm up the grid. I think we need a basket of renewable energies.
Little geothermal,
We have geothermal right now.
a little solar,
A lot of solar.
more windmills.
Depends.
Yeah.
Yeah, like, does the community want it? Hydro could be another good option too.
Yeah. I don't know. Do they? Community, do you want windmills or renewable energy resources?
I think people do. I think we have to figure out the technology around the energy storage piece, because when the sun's not shining and the wind's not blowing, I still want to be able to like turn my lights on.
Well, then the river's flowing.
Yeah, got to make sure that we have folks that are harnessing the power of that.
My goodness, there's so much work to be done.
There's so much to do, but aren't
Yeah.
you glad we get to do it?
I mean, are we just wasting time podcasting?
I don't think so. Like, I am getting a lot of great ideas and
Okay.
feeding off of this conversation.
So how come we don't have more renewable energy? Because the community doesn't want it? Or they haven't voiced it?
I don't necessarily think it's that. I mean, our state set out a goal, a very ambitious goal of by 2045, 100% renewable energy, right? And so now we have Hawaiian Electric and KIUC. They've got an energy cooperative on Kauai. They have to meet those goals. And so it's maybe not them like being the power providers, but it's working with independent power producers to develop projects that help us get there.
What percentage are we at renewable right now?
I haven't checked, and I would say that Hawai'i Island produces the most amount of renewable energy. And so what we are doing here is actually carrying the whole state in terms of working towards that goal.
I see. So it doesn't matter what percent what island does.
It's statewide, but I think we're over carrying right now.
I see.
Because we're producing so much more renewables than other islands.
Right.
Yeah. And every island is different, right? Like
Yeah.
every island is different in terms of like what they're able to produce. When the projects are proposed, I think it's important to come out and say, yes, we want that. So like this morning, there was like a little radio announcement about expect more traffic on the roads from Ka'u because they're busing people to Hilo for the
Yeah.
Puna Lu'u development.
Right.
Yeah. So that's a special management area permit that is being requested by the developer. And that permit is granted by the Planning Commission.
How's that looking?
I don't know
Yeah.
what the community wants.
It doesn't sound like it.
It doesn't. Developments have to be conducive to community values. There's only so much that we can carry.
You know, I'm from Ka'u, so I've kind of seen that. I've kind of seen that happen my whole life, where as a district we resist development, and I think it keeps Ka'u pristine in a sense. So I think the most important thing for Ka'u is to try to communicate with the community how we provide opportunities for the people in Ka'u and for the young people without being so intrusive. You know what I mean? How do we create like more sustainable style jobs and things that preserve that aina but give opportunity at the same time?
I think we have to develop this sense of like businesses being triple bottom line driven, right? Where it's not just about making money, but it's ensuring that there's good for people and good for the planet, that you're not sacrificing aina to make money. Because I think we've seen that happen too much in the past. And it's gotten us into this situation where, I don't know, you can't undo what's been done.
You definitely cannot. And I think that was the nice thing about growing up down there was, I mean, there wasn't a lot of tourists or outside influence, and so like you can access the coastline. You're not having somebody tell you like, oh, you cannot walk through my yard to get to the beach. You know what I mean? And so growing up in that area, it was great because you had a lot of land that was really untouched, and the kind of lifestyle it provided was something that would be really hard to get anywhere else. I mean, maybe like, you know, not Kohala or something similar, but, you know, Kona, Hilo, even during the pandemic, I mean, during COVID, the whole Ka'u coastline was lined with camping lights, and that was all people who weren't even from Ka'u, you know, so migrating from Kona, Hilo, going down to Ka'u, because it is one of the last places where you can like kind of experience the outdoors unrestricted in a sense. And I mean, during that time, people were definitely taking advantage of the resources down there. But I think overall, in general, you know, you cannot even camp anywhere in Kona or Hilo without a permit, you know. And Ka'u is kind of one of the last places that you can just load your truck up, take your family, go to the beach for the weekend. And I think that should be preserved and kept the way that it is. But I think that we definitely need to provide opportunities down there and resources. Growing up there, I mean, in terms of jobs or what you're going to be or what you're going to do, most people are looking to move out of Ka'u because there's not a lot of job opportunities down there and a lot of things that you have access to. So,
And what would you say would be the jobs and industries that are like conducive to Ka'u's values?
I think down there it would really be grants. It would be things that are contributing to the preservation or the revitalization of the area.
So like INA stewardship.
Yeah.
Yeah, like a green job score.
Yeah, like rebuilding the fish ponds, maybe doing eco-friendly agriculture, kind of things that you can work in unison with the land and provide opportunities down there, right? Now most of the jobs in Ka'u are either coffee farms or Mauna Loa MacNuts, right? Or, there's the school. So my mom was a teacher, so you can teach, you can work at the hospital. There's not many,
And those are important things. Like we need
Yeah.
healthcare and we need education.
for sure. And you have a lot of ag industry, but I don't know if it's eco-friendly per se. Jobs that kind of work in unison with the preservation of the area. So how can we get people to steward it and preserve it while earning income,
Yeah, I believe in that. During the pandemic, our office worked with Rep. Sean Quinlan, and we got $5 million to do a green jobs corps, and that was administered by the Kupu Aina Corps program. So there were like 300 jobs across the state where people were being put to work in the land, and my hope was that we could sneak some tech in there because I think it's really important to continuously monitor changes in the environment to then say, okay, these changes are happening because of changes in the natural environment with like climate change or because of like, human activities. And so constantly monitoring will build up the data that we need to make policy decisions and also drive other actions to make sure that INA is prepared,
Nice.
preserved.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's my take on coal anyway.
Yeah. I think there's a lot of opportunity to do that.
Yeah. I think it's just access and the knowledge to the resource, right? Like I said, like where to go, how to apply, how you access or obtain the grants. That's a lot of things, right? Is people just don't have the information that they're looking for or know where to get it or even how to utilize it once they have it. So I think it's a lot of education needs to be put out in terms of grant writing or where we can find the resources, how we can qualify for them, what that looks like. Because I know depending on the grants as well, there's only a certain time frame you can apply for certain grants.
Sure. Yeah.
So
And it's like, how do I know all the cycle so I can stack the grants where there's a continuous flow
Right.
of funding and we're able to test ideas, grow out the operation. Yeah. And then also like operate like when legit 501c3, right? No, but you know what I mean? Like if you want to go after like the
Yeah.
bigger, more complicated like federal grants,
Right.
you got to start small. You got to make sure you have that basic infrastructure set up within your organization where you're doing the audits, where you've got the bookkeeping, where you're paying the taxes, where you're doing all of that stuff.
Yeah, or you'll lose the funding.
You'll lose the funding.
So that's what I mean, right? That's a whole nother part of the education process. Like, okay, now here's the access to the information. Here's the grant. Now, how do you run that, right? Like now you need a bookkeeper. Now, like you're saying, right?
You need the training and technical assistance to go from idea to like creation and making it a tangible reality.
That's the kind of thing I think if we provided would be great. Like a 5-day course on like, okay, you want to go from applying for a grant to actually seeing it through and how to maintain what you're looking at, right? Like you need to file these papers. This is the qualifications. These are the people you need on staff to make sure that this can keep going. It's even who to call, right? Like who do you call to get insurance? I know when I first started, especially in Ocean View, Lava 2, all these areas, not everybody will insure that, right? And then there's going to be some people on here who are going to say you cannot get lava insurance. Well, I guess if you know, you know. If you don't, you don't. But it's just where to find the resource. Okay, I need insurance.
Yeah.
Right?
Where do I go?
Exactly.
Who do I call?
It's providing a resource list as well. Like, here's how you do it. It's almost like you have to lay it out, right? You have to provide the information, provide the process, and then provide access to the correct resources or people to to make sure that they're able to succeed.
I think the process is so overwhelming. I think we have to chunk it out and break it up into steps so that people can feel like, okay, there's a small win here that I've made every single step of the way.
Yeah.
So as more information is available, I'll send it your way. You can do a little mini announcement.
Sure.
No, but I like the idea of doing everything that we can to give local people like a chance to just take their ideas and make it happen.
For sure.
Yeah, rising tide lifts all boats.
There we go. Yep.